August has ended up being a really wonderful reading month for me. In the first 2 weeks of the month, I participated in the summer mixtape readathon and had a really fantastic time and read lots of books. I will link those wrap-ups in the description. And for the rest of the month, I have made a considerable dent in my TBR. So today I'm going to wrap up 5 of the books that I managed to read in the month of August. The first book that I have to wrap up is Circus of Wonders by Elizabeth McNeill. This is a historical fiction novel set in Victorian England in which we follow our main character Nell, who is an outcast in her society because of the distinctive freckles and birthmarks she has across her entire body. Because of this, her father sells her to Jasper Jupiter's Circus of Wonders. At first, Nell is absolutely devastated to be forced into these circumstances, but as she becomes the centre of the spectacular, she begins to really thrive and long for the attention. But as her star continues to rise and threatens to eclipse that of the circus master Jasper Jupiter, both Nell and Jasper will make decisions that will put them in danger. I'm going to start by saying that I did not like the romance elements of this book at all. I felt like it was completely unnecessary, and the only real reason it was there was to create tension between Jasper and his younger brother Toby. And I also felt that the narrative point of view of Toby was at times really redundant and didn't necessarily further the story for me. With all that being said, I actually really enjoyed this book. I felt like Nell was such a relatable main character because at first all she wants to do is be accepted and to be treated like everyone else. But as she begins to be celebrated for who she is and she stops making herself smaller for others, she begins to really come into her own. And I think it's so understandable for people who have been forced into the shadows for a very long time. Once they get a taste of that fame and that spotlight, it's so reasonable for them to chase that because it's better than acceptance, it's glorification. And I completely understand where Nell was coming from and her motivations as a character. On that same vein, I found Jasper Jupiter to be a really excellent main character because I hated him, and I was meant to, because of his motivations as a character, the way he treats people and why he does what he does throughout the novel just lined him up to be someone that I did not like, which was so perfect to balance out between Nell and Jasper throughout this novel. And again, on that same vein, I felt like the ending was very satisfactory for me. All the characters ended up exactly where I thought they should be, and for me, that was an excellent way to end this novel, and I give it 4 out of 5 stars. The next book that I have to wrap up is Out of Love by Hazel Hayes. This is an adult fiction novel in which we follow an unnamed female character as she is packing up her flat following a breakup with her long-term boyfriend, and as she reflects on the events that led them to this breakup. I was a little bit hesitant going into this book because I have watched Hazel Hayes as a YouTuber for a very long time, and I have previously been really let down by YouTuber books, but this one was wonderful. I found the main character to be really relatable as she deals with mental health struggles and struggling with the idea that she is failing where everyone else is succeeding and where everyone else knows what they're doing with their lives and feeling like they are just very much lost. The writing throughout this novel felt honest and real and raw, which I really appreciated. However, there was a little bit of an issue for me with the structure, as I did find it a little bit confusing at times. With that being said though, I did really enjoy this novel and I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. The next book that I have to wrap up is The Wolf Den by Elodie Harper. This is a historical fiction novel set in Pompeii in which we follow our main character Amara, who has been sold into slavery by her mother and lives in the infamous brothel The Wolf Den in Pompeii. Amara is absolutely determined to regain her freedom and buy her way out of slavery, and despite the initial hostility of the brothel owner Felix, she begins to embroil herself more and more in his schemes. However, as she becomes more involved in his shady dealings, she begins to realise how much danger she and the other slaves are really in. I really enjoyed Amara as a main character. I felt like she was so interesting and detailed. She was very pragmatic and calculated in her decisions, and the way that she negotiated trying to win her freedom and trying to gain her personhood were very pragmatic and not exactly romantic in nature, but I feel like that is a very honest way and a very real way that someone would act in these situations. I also really enjoyed the pacing of this novel. I was fully engaged throughout, and I'm very excited to pick up the sequel in the coming months when it finally comes out in paperback, because I give this book 4 out of 5 stars. The next book I have to wrap up is The Prophet by Kahil Gibran. This is a short spiritual classic in which we follow our main character, a prophet named Al-Mustafa, who's about to return to his homeland after 12 years in exile. Before he leaves, he is called upon by the people to impart some wisdom. This book contains 26 short essays dealing with a range of topics from things like religion and politics and also the nature of life. I thought that some of these essays contained some really lovely sentiments. However, I didn't necessarily think that I was the right audience for this book, and I also didn't think the author was saying anything all that new. So I gave this book a 3 out of 5 stars. The final book that I have to talk about in this wrap-up video is Lore Olympus Volume 2 by Rachel Smith. This is a modern graphic novel retelling of the myth of Hades and Persephone. I read the first volume at the end of last year and really enjoyed it, and I equally enjoyed the second volume. I really like how Rachel Smith has modernised these characters and brought them into a modern setting while also remaining true to their origins in the original myth. And I really like the art style. It's very sharp and stylistic, which is really enjoyable for me. However, something that someone pointed out was that an awful lot of the illustrations and an awful lot of the story has a very like male gaze vibe to it. A lot of the ways that the female characters are depicted throughout is very sexualized when it doesn't necessarily need to be. And while I didn't pick that up in the first volume because I was just like flying through it and really enjoying it, once it was pointed out to me, it did become more apparent to me in the second volume. With that being said though, I did still really enjoy it, and I will continue to pick up future volumes as they are released, and I gave this book a 4. So those are all the books that I have to wrap up in today's video. I'm really pleased with the quantity and quality of books I managed to get through in August. Please let me know what you've been reading recently, and I will see you soon.